Welcome, everybody. It's so great to be here. I love CSLA, and anytime I get to present is such a treat. Some of you I already know, and some of you I hope will be friends after this session. So we're going to talk a little bit about researching and kind of the things that I do that might help your students. For those of you who don't know me, though, these are some of the most current books that I've written, mostly nonfiction or books based on a true story. To describe my work in a nutshell, though, I want to tell you one of my favorite stories. At a school visit, a librarian asked me to talk briefly about Nama's Reason to Smile because they'd all read it. And then she said, segue into Plastic Ahoy. Well, these books couldn't be more different. Nama is about equal access to education, and Plastic Ahoy is about, well, garbage. So I asked the students for help. And they said, Nama's Reason to Smile is picture book fiction, it's illustrated with drawings, it's about a little girl who wants to go to school. And Plastic Ahoy is middle grade nonfiction illustrated with photos about ocean plastic. So next, I asked the students how the books are the same. And a third grader blew my mind. She said they both want us to do something. And that's my book, that's my work in a nutshell, all wrapped up in a tidy package. I want readers to do something. My books start with three very simple elements. I have to have a fascination with my topic. I have to have some sort of personal experience that guides me to that topic in some way, shape, or form. And of course, research. The combination of the personal experience and my interest in the topic create this synergy that's really held together with the research that I do. So let's take a look at my newest book for a minute as by way of example throughout this presentation. My new book is called Planet Ocean. And I teamed up with Annie Crawley again, the photographer from Plastic Ahoy and zoo scientist to the rescue, because Annie's, well, awesome. I love the ocean. This is where the personal experience comes in. I love the ocean. I always have. I feel at home on the water. I love the pounding of the surf. I love swimming with sea turtles. I love the variety of life in the ocean, some of which I will touch and some of which I won't. And it just seems so otherworldly to me. But I didn't want to write a book that was all about the ocean. I wanted a different spin. So after a lot of talking and a lot of research, Annie and I focused on how the ocean story is our story, how we are connected to the ocean. Our research includes inspiring scientists like Daria Akinak on the right, who developed a brilliant new algorithm that removes, get this, an algorithm that removes the water from an underwater photo. Isn't that amazing? So scientists can see and count all the marine life in the photo. It's just amazing. We also created videos for 11 different QR codes in this book. You can see one on this page about a turtle. These videos take readers below the surface to see what they're missing. So feel free to scan this QR code on your screen and call up the video and watch it later when the presentation's over. You'll be amazed at what Annie does with these videos. We interviewed artists and indigenous people, kids and teens, all trying to spread the word that we are part of the sea, even if we don't live near its shores. We investigated different ways we impact our ocean. For instance, maybe how climate change alters the chemistry of seawater and harms shellfish and coral and other fish. And how climate change melts sea ice, flooding communities and creating millions of climate refugees every single year. We also investigated how unsustainable fishing practices remove marine life faster than it can reproduce, and how the many, many forms of human pollution harm our sea. Pollution such as plastic or runoff or even noise. In the last chapter, we kind of bring it all together. We show readers how to draw on their personal experiences to share their ocean stories and speak up for the sea. There's a whole storytelling chapter in the back. Annie and I have developed a terrific mixture of science and language arts activities in our curriculum guide for Planet Ocean. It's a little bit of a commercial message here. But if you are interested in that curriculum guide, which isn't even on my website yet, that's how far behind I am. But if you're interested in that curriculum guide, just text STEM to the telephone number on the screen and I'll drop it in your inbox for you. But the reason I tell you about Planet Ocean is because a lot of the different skills that I used as a researcher, I'm going to tell you about now. So I had this fascination with my topic, how the ocean story is our story. What is our connection to the sea? I had my personal experiences, body surfing on the ocean, crabbing off the Jersey shore, digging for clams with my aunt in Rhode Island, building sand sculptures with my dad on the beach in the Atlantic Ocean. I grew up in the East. And of course, research, working with Annie and the amazing people that we interviewed for this book. I think we interviewed something like 30 or 40 people for this book. So writing begins with a topic. We all know that. But sometimes this is the hardest part for students. Most students know exactly what they want to write about, and others, well, don't. They have no idea. And I used to feel when I was a kid that I had nothing to say that anybody would want to read about. So the right topic is important to any author, whether the author is in 4th grade or middle school or high school or an adult. And we have to live with that topic for a long time. We work really hard on the research and the writing. And I have to admit that after a while, I get sick of writing my books. It's like, okay, enough already. I have to put this down. And think about a student who's struggling with all the mechanics of writing. So we really have to love that topic. We have to be invested in it. And students are no different. So we have to find the right thing to write about. So here's where a notebook comes to the rescue. I know a lot of kids often have writing journals in school. I use a notebook every time I write a different book. Sometimes my one notebook spills over into many notebooks. Planet Ocean took 4 notebooks. For students, I recommend a writing notebook, definitely. It could be a little pocket-sized notebook, or it could be a larger journal size. But at the very end of the journal or the notebook, save 10, 15 pages or so, specifically for ideas. And I suggest the students bring these notebooks when they go to the library, because ideas can come at any time. They can come when you're browsing the library shelves. They can come when you're reading a book silently. They can come during story time. They can even come when you're looking out the window. So have that notebook handy. Ideas could also include things like cutting out a photo from a magazine and pasting it to the back, or writing down a video link that you want to remember, or a map, or a chart, or a graph. All of those things can be thrown into your idea section of your notebook. And if you're an ultra digital school, kids can even start their own Pinterest boards with ideas. Maybe each idea is scrawled inside a cloud-shaped figure, like mine usually are. I like these little clouds that sort of separate the ideas one from another. Or maybe they're written on individual sticky notes and stuck to the back of the journal. You might have seen this way of capturing ideas as a community idea board in school, to which all students contribute. But I have to tell you, I remember as a student not wanting to share my ideas with the world for fear that they would be made fun of. Because the minute that somebody says, what a dumb idea, that is the very end of that idea. You'll never see it again. So the privacy of a journal worked a little better for me. Also, ideas are messy, and by definition, they're not yet ready to be shared. Ideas are threads that sort of float through the air, and while they may connect in your mind, the person who's reading about it might have this puzzled look and go, I don't get it. And you don't want somebody to say that when you share an idea that's just starting to be born. So unless, and ideas, you have to capture them and write them down, because as they're floating through the air, if you're not open to them, you'll miss them. So another reason to have someplace to write them down. Sometimes when you look at your list of ideas, you realize that certain things can be connected. And here's an idea journal that I wrote down, and I connected a few very simply just with another color. I used a red line, and I put plastic pollution and overfishing and the ocean beauty and pain and ocean acidification, coral bleaching, climate change, CO2. Those are all in Planet Ocean. So all of those ideas connected for me, but they might not mean anything to you when you're reading that, right? Jess Keating says, in your notebook, before you start your day, draw an empty box or a circle on your page and write the words, one amazing thing. And leave it blank, and then walk away. Challenge yourself, she says, to be on the lookout for one amazing thing that sparks your curiosity. Curiosity is your heart's way of telling you to pay attention. The minute you give yourself this exercise, your awareness will go into overdrive. The forced limit of that little box is also incredibly freeing. You're not asking yourself to solve world hunger. You're looking for one amazing thing to put in that little box. So with Jess's one amazing thing, all of a sudden, students are open to those wisps of ideas that might otherwise escape their notice, which hopefully helps solve the what shall I write about problem a lot of students have. Oftentimes, nonfiction writing assignments look like this: the 5-paragraph essay with an assigned topic. This essay can use an expository writing style that describes or explains or informs, or it can use a narrative writing style, a style that tells a story or conveys an experience. There are definite benefits to this essay, especially for students who are just learning proper writing conventions, but it is not the only way to approach nonfiction writing. There are actually 5 kinds of nonfiction on your library shelves, different topics that lend themselves to different formats. And perhaps unlocking these new formats will also unlock creative researching and writing in your students. I'll go through the 5 kinds of nonfiction really briefly. They were developed by Melissa Stewart, and perhaps you've already heard them or heard her speak about them, but it bears repeating. The first kind is active. These are the how-to books. These are the books that have step-by-step instructions, how to cook, how to sew, how to code. They're highly interactive and they teach a skill. And they usually have an expository writing style, describing, informing, explaining. These books are also great books for your makerspace in your library. Here's an example of active writing, or what could be an example. These are students that I visited who had read Plastic Ahoy, and they thought about the amount of trash that they generated in their classroom. So they decided to recycle, refuse, and simply use less plastic. This tiny trash can that this little girl is holding represents their entire landfill waste for the school year 2018-2019. So imagine if they wrote step-by-step instructions for another classroom to do what they did. That would be active writing. Browsable books, a second kind of nonfiction, are designed to capture kids' attention. They feature short blocks of straightforward text written in an expository style, and these books can either be read cover to cover or kids can skip around. Books like 1,000 Facts About the White House or the Guinness World Book of Records are browsable books. This 4th grade Endangered Species Project is an example of browsable nonfiction with headings and labels just like you would find in a browsable book. Traditional books tell us all about a topic in a clear, straightforward language, with an expository writing style. Think Seymour Simon's books like Destination Moon or Elephants. And here's my 3rd grade friend, Beckett. He wrote to me after reading Sea Otter Heroes, and he drafted this expository essay that he put up on change.org about why sea otters were important to the California coastline. And he wanted people to sign his petition. And at the time I downloaded this clip, nearly 1,400 people had signed his petition. It's traditional writing. Expository literature has an expository writing style, but it focuses on a topic and a strong engaging language. And it can be poetic, or it can be playful, or it can be lyrical. Feathers Not Just for Flying by Melissa Stewart's a great example. And a lot of Steve Jenkins' work is a great example of expository literature. Here's another example of student writing that fits one of these 5 kinds of nonfiction. A middle school I visited that studied Plastic Ahoy. And as part of their language arts component, they became science communicators and wrote short, tightly focused blog posts about various aspects of ocean plastic. And here's just a screenshot of some of the headlines and the first lines that they wrote. The last kind of nonfiction is narrative. It tells a story. It conveys an experience in a strong voice with rich, engaging language. Any biography fits this kind of nonfiction. Also, Plastic Ahoy, Sea Otter Heroes, Zoo Scientists to the Rescue, Eavesdropping on Elephants. They're all narrative nonfiction. And here's my last example. This student, Maddie, that I'm with here, she first was introduced to Plastic Ahoy in 8th grade. And she decided she wanted to study plastic in the ocean while she was in college. She wrote her college essay about what Plastic Ahoy meant to her, narrative nonfiction. So now that you understand those kinds of nonfictions that I went through in a lightning fast manner, here's an idea for you. Ask students to look at a variety of nonfiction titles and categorize them into one of the 5 kinds of nonfiction. This activity can work in a classroom, but it can also work remotely. Melissa does this with students all the time. I did it with a group of students, several groups of students when I was a writer in residence in New York City, and it worked brilliantly. The students can either check books out from the local library. If you're in person, you could provide books for them, or maybe you could use online books from something like Epic. As the students research, they can keep in mind what kind of nonfiction they want to write. As after they have their topic, then the next step is, okay, what kind of nonfiction do I want to write? Active, browsable, traditional, expository, or narrative. Of course, if you want your students to be savvy researchers, they need skills. And these skills really need to be practiced throughout the school year. The first skill is questioning, both developing research questions, what do I want to know, and questions for interviewing people as sources. I mentioned I was a writer in residence in New York City, and right before COVID hit. And these first graders I worked with were assigned to interview somebody at their school and write 3 sentences about that person. These girls were so adorable. As you can imagine, their early questions followed a pattern. What's your favorite ice cream? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite fill in the blank? Another skill that comes in handy for students is skimming. So being able to look at certain aspects of a source to see if it will work for you. So here's where you can put some answers in the chat for me. What do you look at? What do you look for when you skim a book? Lisa, maybe you can help read some of them out.
Yes, I would be glad to. Let's see, until they start writing. Let's see if they will write in there. I got a lot of dog barking now.
What do you look for when you're skimming a source? What do you look at?
Some people say they're looking for headings.
Yep, headings, definitely. I look right down the table of contents, and then I flip back to the index. Is the very thing I'm searching for even listed in the index?
Ooh, that's a good one. And someone said keywords and things that look important.
Keywords. Yep. I also look at the photographs, the maps, and the charts to see if they're even talking about the part of the world I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there are lots of different things, subheadings, keywords. I also look at bibliographies and adult sources. Where did those people get their information who wrote this book?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so next skill, note taking is a really important research skill. And whichever strategy your school teaches, I know that there are different strategies out there. You have to give students a lot of practice at note taking. So one possible method that I've seen work is where students write their questions on the left and then find the answers to those questions through their research and write the answers on the right with their sources. But of course, there are lots of other ways to go about that. Reading pictures is a phenomenal way to research. I don't know if any of you attended Noah Daniels' session on decoding photographs and her Friday photo. It was amazing. What are these photos trying to tell us? And when were they taken? And what was the context? Another skill is finding treasure. And that's a euphemism for finding the perfect source. There's always one, but we can talk about here a wide variety of sources that students can use. Books, videos, magazines, newspapers, and then interviews. Interviews, I think, are an underused way of finding source material for children. My bibliography for Planet Ocean, for instance, was 8 pages long. And those were the resources that I relied on heavily. Others I looked at and they never even made the bibliography. And the last skill I think that is really helpful for students is organization. That ability to collate all of these notes and articles and clippings and videos and links and be able to find exactly what you need when you're trying to write your piece. This tattered and torn booklet, I have it right here too, is or was my reference guide when I was in high school. It was published by my high school English teachers and it is still on my shelf today. Yes, it's a little dated, and it's more of a memento than a real research source right now, but was a very good tool. My teachers covered outlining, note-taking, pre-research, creating a bibliography and some footnotes, and revising, all skills I use today. So rather than 13 steps to research, I'd like to share my top 5 that you can use with students. The first one is developing questions. Questions we want to answer in our writing, but also, again, questions that we can use in our interviews. Great questions are crucial for good interviews. They're crucial for good research. And again, they're a terrific skill to practice. So going back to those first graders in New York City, I asked them to interview me with their original questions. And everyone elicited a one-word response. So here was how the interview process went. Mrs. Newman, what's your favorite ice cream? Chocolate. Mrs. Newman, what's your favorite color? Blue. Right? Not much information there. So I talked to these girls about asking zinger questions, questions that give us stories rather than one-word answers. And you can see how they developed over the course of the week. The questions they asked their interviewee included, why did you become a teacher? What is hard about it? Who are your friends and how did you meet them? And then my favorite, that's not listed here, but it's still my favorite. What are you thankful for? These are zinger questions, and these were first graders that did this. Here's another way to develop students' question writing. This might not necessarily be applicable to the interview, but it might be applicable to asking questions about what you want to write about. Ask them to recreate this chart on a whole spread in their notebooks and use sticky notes, 1 note per fact. What is something that you think you know about your topic? And then before they begin researching, they can complete this, add several different sticky notes, what I think I know about my topic. As they research, they can start moving those sticky notes. What I knew was right, or what I actually thought I knew was actually a misconception, and here's the correct piece of information. And then as they read, they can start to develop a list of wonderings and new information. Step 2, in my mind, is fast. Not that it doesn't take a long time, but we're asking in kids in pre-research to look at a number of different sources and use those skimming skills. So students should look at a source for maybe 2 or 3 minutes and decide whether it's going to be any use to them. If it is, they put it in one pile. If it's not going to be of any use, they put it in another pile. They can go back to it later for further reading. I also do this on the internet, and I use browser bookmarks quite extensively to save sources that I've skimmed. And here are my bookmarks for Planet Ocean. Most of the folder names correspond to the chapters I'm planning to have. There's also a folder there for teacher guide activities and another folder for, I can't remember, but I split up some of the topics like ocean acidification. Even though that might be in the Coral Triangle or the Salish Sea, I gave it its own folder just to help me collate all the resources on that one hard scientific topic. And then all of those folders have links inside them. In fact, this Salish Sea list scrolls on for a couple of screens. So you can see how many things, how quickly I'm moving through this, how I'm skimming and collecting as I skim. At this point, students may have to circle back to step 1 if they can't find the answers to their questions. Perhaps they're not asking the right questions. Perhaps they need to modify their topic a little bit. But if the pre-research stage yields results, then students will move to the next step. Focus. In my opinion, focus is one of the most important steps in researching. And whether we're writing a 5-paragraph essay or a few sentences like the first grade girls I worked with, or a middle grade nonfiction book, probably the best illustration of focus I can give you is this. I have written 3 ocean books, each with a different focus. Plastic Ahoy is about garbage in the North Pacific. Sea Otter Heroes is about a food chain relationship between an apex predator and seagrass. And Planet Ocean is about our connection to the sea. 3 books about the ocean, 3 different focuses. Foci, what is that? Focuses, foci, I don't know. So during that New York City Writer in Residence program, I also worked with 4th graders. They had to research and write about famous women. This student chose Mother Teresa. Biographies are hard because a person's life is long. And a 5-paragraph essay with all of the basic facts crammed in doesn't really make for exciting reading. And it's not very exciting writing either. So the girls and I worked on focus. What was special about this person? What one thing was your person known for? Can you focus each of your paragraphs around that one thing? So for Mother Teresa, we might come up with, we might open with this introduction that this student wrote. Agnes, Mother Teresa, had always had a passion and love for the poor. When they were sick or dying, she would bring them to her hospital and take care of them. So that's the focus right there. Her passion and love for taking care of the sick and dying. So here's what the 5-paragraph essay might look like. Or maybe if we, a lot of 5-paragraph essay instructions say, well, in the first paragraph, you have to talk about her early life. And the next paragraph, you have to talk about her education and her middle years. And the next paragraph, you have to talk about her later life. But sometimes it gets all jumbled up. But if you start with your focus, how Mother Teresa was compassionate and helpful towards people in need, your essay looks a little bit different, and you can sprinkle in education and anecdotes from early, middle, and later years as you move through the essay. And if we talk about how she was named Mother Teresa, it has to be in relation to her serving the poor, her compassionate nature. So you don't just want to state she was called Mother Teresa, because you want to state why, or you want to show how her actions led to that name. You don't just want to tell us, you want to show us. And by organizing your essay with a focus in mind, you can do that. As students research, they will come across photos like this one in Planet Ocean. Chances are students will need the skills to uncover the meaning of the photos. And I told you about Noah Daniel last week in her Decoding Photos session. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. It's amazing. Her photo activity is simple. And you can do this activity in person or with a smart board or virtually with something like Jamboard. Noah used Jamboard. So the first step is looking at a photo and just simply describing it. The colors in the photo, the time of day, the people, the animals, the landscape, the shapes, the textures, the text, just describing exactly what you see. Any thoughts here on this photo? Give me a couple of descriptions in the chat, exactly what you see. Don't infer, just tell me what you see. Lisa, you want to help me out here?
We have people that are saying blue, daytime, water is still, underwater, two divers following a shark.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, the next step is analyzing this photo. This is where we begin to ask questions. What draws your eye immediately? What's going on in the foreground or the background or the middle ground? Are there any recognizable landmarks? What's the overall mood or feeling? So here's where you're starting just to ask questions about the photo.
This is lovely. Spotted shark. We have spotted shark, two divers following a shark.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the questions yet. They're coming.
The next step is interpreting the photo, using the descriptions and the questions that you develop and infer what is happening. So here's where you're actually starting to make some decisions. And then the last step is evaluating. Maybe add a title to this work. What do you think about it? What is the photographer trying to say? What is left out of the photo? So learning to read photos is a huge part of research. And the very last step is organization. Here are my 4 Planet Ocean notebooks again, but this time they're open to random pages. And you'll see the notes on several of the pages are highlighted with different colors. Each color represents a chapter in Planet Ocean. See the key on the right? I used a blue highlighter for things that I wanted in the Coral Triangle chapter. I used green for things I want in the Salish Sea chapter. I used yellow for things that belong with the Arctic chapter. And I used pink for my last storytelling chapter. So students can do this very easily with their notes. When they go back to their 5-paragraph focus plan, they can color code each of those paragraphs. And as they read through their notes, they can then highlight the words, phrases, notes that belong in all of the different paragraphs. Notice the conclusion has 2 highlighter colors, orange and yellow, because sometimes stuff that doesn't fit in the introduction, you can put in the conclusion or vice versa. So to review my 5 top research steps, ask zinger questions, pre-research or information gathering, focus, read the pictures, and organize research for writing. These pictures on this slide show an additional component of step 5 in action, that organizational step. In the early draft of Eavesdropping on Elephants, I took my 5 highlighters and I made up a brand new key. So yellow meant the music as metaphor theme that I wanted to run throughout the manuscript. Green meant the conservation theme that I wanted to run throughout the manuscript. And as I read my manuscript, I had 5 highlighters in my hand, and I just highlighted different passages that went along with these various themes that I was trying to convey. And then I spread the whole manuscript out on the floor and I looked at the colors. I couldn't read the words because I was standing so far away, but I could see the colors and I could see how they moved through the manuscript and whether there was too much or whether they just sort of dropped off and disappeared. And it really helped me balance my writing. Nonfiction authors approach research and writing in a variety of ways. I've given you the way I approach it. And if you haven't already seen Nonfiction Writers Dig Deep, please check it out. Melissa Stewart put together essays from 50 nonfiction authors, and she started with a blog and she turned her blog essays into a book. And you'll find a number of activities in its pages to get students researching and writing. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now so I can see you again. And I'm hoping that maybe we can take some questions.
Just took your mic off and start asking away.
Yeah, there aren't very many of us in here. So right, just pop your mic off and let's make this very casual.
Well, Patricia, I actually love teaching students how to research, and I love, love, love having them do those zinger questions. The first part is having them be information sleuths. They're information detectives. And I tell them that anybody can do research and that everybody's a researcher if you can question.
Oh, I love
And
that.
everybody has questions. So
love
that
that.
research, you know, we deconstruct it so that it's not so difficult for kids, especially I have middle schoolers.
Right, it's really
And
like a puzzle.
yeah. So just want them to, especially laying out all, I love the idea of categorizing the nonfiction. I was thinking about that a minute ago. I don't think I've ever done that, but I put, you know, tons of nonfiction on all of our tables and they get to go peruse, but we didn't categorize them.
Right, the
But they found books that they loved.
categorization is kind of important because it then makes different nonfiction writing styles available to the students. They think, oh, I could do this.
Yeah. And they find books that they never would have found.
Right,
And they just, a lot of times they just run to the fiction section or the graphic novel section. But doing this also spurs their real world problems that are going on around them. And like, oh, these people are solving problems. Oh, they're curious. Oh, they're working with others. Oh, how cool. They're in the ocean. You know?
exactly, exactly. I'm gonna check out the chat here.
Beautiful ideas. Thank you for explaining the processes that you use.
Oh, thank you, whoever. Oh, Deb, thank you for sharing the link to the book. I appreciate it. If you don't have any questions about research, do you have any particular questions about the books I've written?
Tanya says, I'm working with classes that have just finished research and I want to bring your ideas for organizing.
Oh, wonderful. The color coding really, I don't know how I came up with that, but it really helps me because then when I finally start to write, and you know, when you're researching, your brain is doing one thing, but when you're writing, you really have to sort of kick yourself into a different gear. And you don't want to have to pause your writing to reread your notes. But the color coding allows me to flip really fast to go to certain sections that I know I have to include in this one paragraph or in this one chapter. And I find that it helps me keep that writing brain engaged while I'm looking for a fact.
I like that. I was actually going to make like sticky notes or cards and kind of lay them out and start, you know, thinking about where to put them and how to plan them. But rather than have them do that, why not have them just highlight so that they can maybe then start to organize that way? Because they do get a little resentful about having to rewrite their notes. It's true. They're like, I've already written this once. I don't want to have to write it out again to make these note cards.
I know. I'm such a lazy note taker that I have an app on my phone that takes a picture of a page and automatically turns it into a PDF file that I email myself. So I don't even take notes at the library anymore. I just take pictures of pages and I send the pages to myself and then I highlight them on the PDF.
What is that app called?
I've got it right here. Let me look. It's an Adobe app. It's called Adobe Scan. And I think that certainly older students could use this because obviously they all have devices. I'm not sure it would be terribly useful for elementary students, but I much prefer to read and use the PDF capability to highlight lines in a PDF. And then I have it. And when my copy editor is asking me to source a quote or prove that I read something, I just send her the whole document that's already highlighted. It's super. But then again, I've done the whole note card thing. I've gotten lazy.
What else? I like the idea of the one amazing thing too. I love the Jess Keating's idea that you gave to us as well. I love
Right,
that for my
that's in
students.
that nonfiction writers dig deep. There are a lot of different ideas in there. And the cool thing about nonfiction writers dig deep is that all of the proceeds are being split in 3 different ways. We Need Diverse Books, NCTE, and the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators are all benefiting from that book.
It's good to know.
And I know my kids read your books when they were younger, but I can't remember which ones they read. I wish I could remember now because my kids are 15 and 13 now. So it's been a while since I've read them with them.
Well, thank you for reading them.
And we have Terry says, thank you, beautiful ideas. Thank you for explaining the processes that you use. Oh, I don't know if I said that to you before. And let's see. Deborah says, I was not familiar with your books. I'm going out and I'm going to get them now. Just the titles are so engaging. Can't wait to read them and share them with students.
Thank you.
And John says, I'm working on a Black History Month unit that draws topic ideas from old family photos archived at the Los Angeles Public Library. Shades of LA collection in Tessa. And I'm still figuring out what I want the students to produce, maybe a narrative or storytelling of some kind. And
scrapbook might be fun. That would be more browsable kinds of writing. It depends on what skill you want them to practice, but browsable writing is very short, very focused, and it helps to get students to write tight. We're all trying to write tight. That's the goal of any writer. We want to use the exact right words, no more, no less. And browsable writing is perfect for that. So maybe a scrapbook idea is a good format for you.
Did you say scrapbook?
Scrapbook.
That's a good idea. I was thinking of just having them do the photos are well cataloged with descriptive detail. And so I thought if they would find one that they thought had a story behind it and then go do further research. These are small stories. Like I kind of wanted to get away from the hero stories, you know, like we're redoing Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. I wanted them to focus on like real everyday sorts of people.
Right, right. So like a slice of life kind of thing for the average person.
Well, the photos are so well curated that it's easy to find one that's very kind of evocative and makes you want to look further into it. I'll, you know,
that sounds like a really cool project.
I'm thinking it might turn out pretty well. Right now I've left it pretty open-ended as far as letting the students find a way to tell the story behind the photo. But I think I might have left it too open-ended so that they have like so much freedom that they're not gonna find a focus.
Is the story the real story, or are they making up a story?
I would be willing to, if they based it on facts that they researched, I'd be actually delighted if they wrote a story, you know, that was a fictional story, because they may have thin pickings to go from.
Right.
because there's just not, I mean, it's a photo of, somebody in the 1950s, and they may not be a famous person, or, it's not like you can go to Wikipedia and
Right.
find an
right.
article about everybody.
That's what a lot of historical fiction authors do, is they look at photos and find the everyday dress details, what's on the shelves at the store, what kind of food are they eating, what do the houses look like. Those are the everyday details that are often not in the text of a book, but you pick them up in photos. And then you can create a fictional character around those details.
Yeah, I would be delighted if either way. So I'll give you an example. There are some photos of,
We have to end really soon here, you guys. We have to stop. And I
Yes.
apologize. We should have been talking a little bit earlier. We're going to the closing session in a few minutes, and I'm starting that session, so I have to leave. But here's what we can do. You can go to Discord. Discord has tons of all of us on there discussing, continuing our discussions, since we just don't have enough time to do it all in these sessions. But I know John and Patricia, you two can connect, I'm sure, and have a conversation a little bit longer, because I think this is what this is all about, and we can connect with one another. And thank you everybody for being here. You are amazing. Patricia, your wealth of knowledge is going to ripple throughout the world. The few of us that were here, we're going to make big waves because of you today.
Oh,
So
good.
thank you.
Thank you so
Really
much.
appreciate
It was
you.
nice
you.
to
Thanks
see you
everybody
all.
for being here. We'll see you at the closing session in just a few minutes with Delane Easton. She's gonna get us going. We're gonna get some fire. So
Great.
come and see us.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.